Real Ones is a film podcast where we discuss a collection of works from every era. Each season, our cast of 4 drafts 8 movies, selecting from indie, art house, mainstream, and beyond. Featuring your hosts, Ron.
That's one of the few times in the film I was like, oh, 2 ideas connected back to back. But yeah.
Charles.
I want to throw these themes out so y'all can be like, okay, I get that.
I'm not going to get it, bro.
Lee.
Didn't you cut it off?
Yes. I cut it off a few times. I was like, bro, Ron, what the fuck, bro? Like this nigga's a menace to society. Like, what is this?
And B Wil.
I like Marlene Clark. She's my favorite thing about the movie. There were other things, too, but I want y'all to talk about those. I just had to talk about Marlene.
What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us for another episode of Real Ones. Just to recap how this works, we selected 2 movies, we did a snake draft, and I guess I'm up first. The movie I selected is Bill Gunn's Ganja Hess, but before we get into that, let's start with introductions. B, let's go to you first, man. How's it going, B Wil?
See, now, this is foreshadowing. As the person who is going to have the biggest what the hell about this movie. You know, I started it last Monday night. Full disclosure, we were going to record this episode a week sooner, and, you know, life had me all out of balance. So I had to push. That was on me. And then I watched the first half at night, and I was a little confused. I was also sleepy. And then the next day, I rewatched the first half and realized I wasn't confused. It's just the movie. And watch the second half. And I am here to learn. I'm glad to be here with you fellas, learning, experiencing new things. And yeah, Ron, what the hell?
Yeah, man, that's why we're here. We're just here to learn. That's all we're doing. We're just here to learn. Lee, how's it going, man?
I cannot complain, man. I just rewatched the film today, so it's pretty fresh in my mind. So I have a lot to say about it.
I'm sure you do. You are never lacking for words. Chuck, how's it going over there?
Man, there's an unspoken dynamic between us in this group where people land on the different sides of a scale. And I think people might learn, especially off this movie, that I'm not as close to Ron's side as most people probably think.
What we might learn is what the hell is Ron's side. That's what I'm trying to figure out. We might find out.
Ron is out there on the island by himself.
I'm saying.
But I'm good. I'm fresh off of, I didn't do a full rewatch. I watched the last 40 minutes of it, basically coming right off into this. So, yeah, I'm ready.
All right, so let me state my case. Let me tell you why I put all of you through this agony. So like I said, last year, pandemic, I was in this period where I just wanted to fill in gaps in my own lack of knowledge. So like I said, I wanted to watch more Spike's movies, the ones that I missed, stumbled across Sweet Blood of Jesus. That led me to this. The production of this movie alone is interesting. The director's Bill Gunn. He only made 2 movies. This movie was nearly destroyed. He donated the only copy that exists to the MoMA. The copy that most people have seen, and I actually remember this from my childhood because, by the way, Cinemax used to show some wild movies at night. It was called The Blood Couple, but it's not the same movie. They recut it. And he hates it. He hates it so much that he said, take my name off it altogether. The budget of this film, $350,000. Let me talk about why I picked this movie, because I'll say this, it's clearly an imperfect film, but the vision is there. It's one of the biggest and greatest visions I've ever seen. Probably didn't get to capture everything he wanted to do, but the fact that these ideas were out there in the world, like back in the 60s and 70s, that means a lot to me. So, in my opinion, if you care about black cinema, for better or worse, you should check out this movie. That's why I picked it. So, let's get into overall feelings. We'll go back the opposite direction this time. So, Chuck, let's get into it.
I respect everything you just said. And I had that feeling early on. I had that feeling early on because, like, I had a feeling it was going to be a really imperfect thing, but I was there for the attempt. I was there for the attempt. The first hour, I was in there. I was waiting to see, what was going to happen. I was very interested in the movie, and they lost me and never got me back after that point. Like I know that there's religious allegory there, and I thought that it was going to make sense to me after that first hour, and it did not. That might be just limitations, my own limitations, knowledge-wise in that department. But I didn't feel like it brought it all home in any kind of way. But again, I'm here for the attempt, though, because I want people to take wild shots like that. I hate that he only did 2 movies. I don't know the rest of Gunn's story, but I think it would have been interesting to have seen this concept done in a better way. I think from what you told us, Spike Lee tried to do it and did not do it in a better way. But yeah, that's my initial take. I'll get into more details as we go along, but yeah.
All right, Lee, we'll go to you next.
Cool. So, I thoroughly.
That was like the setup for the roast. That's what it sounded like. They ain't even listening to what you was doing. That's what it sounded like. But let me not presume anything, man. My bad.
Nah. So I actually enjoyed the film, like, thoroughly. I enjoyed a lot of it, and I think what's wrong with it. I mean, it has a lot of flaws, but the biggest thing that's wrong with it is I don't know if Bill Gunn knows how to make straight narrative film. Like, he does not. But like when you have these huge expressionistic ideas, the audience has to have something to connect to. Like, they have to be able to reach out to something. And when your film confuses you with the small moments, like when they're in a living room having a conversation, it's like, okay, who's in this room? Who's talking to who? What's happening? Like, that's where the film kind of lost me. And it's going to get like really film nerdy for a second, but typically, like in film language, you have an establishing shot, which is also called the master shot, where you show the geography of the room and you show where characters are in proximity to one another. So that when you show a character in single, it's not confusing when they're talking to one another. And there's also like the 180-degree rule and all that stuff, which Bill Gunn just does not give a fuck about. So an example, like there's a scene where 2 characters are in a living room and there is no establishing shot. It cuts right in to a close-up of a character talking, and her eye line is looking down as if she's looking down on someone. It's like, oh, she's on the couch, he's on the floor, like what's happening? And then it cuts to his single and he's like in a part of the room that I didn't know existed. He's like there for no reason. It's like, okay, what is happening? So that's what's wrong with the film. He doesn't know how to make a movie. But what I like about it, but
That's
like,
what's wrong with this whole thing is he didn't know what he was doing. But aside from that,
I do think like the ideas are incredible. He reaches out to like Black optimism and Afro pessimism. I don't know how familiar you guys are with those ideas, but am I supposed to like get into like those types of things now, or are we just giving general impressions?
Let's do general impressions because
okay.
I do have some themes that I'm going to throw out, and specifically for Chuck and B Wil, I want to throw these themes out so y'all can be like, okay, I get that now. So, but yeah, continue.
I'm not going to get it, bro.
I liked it overall, but I think that when it reaches for the poetic and the expressionistic, I think that's when it's at its best. And I think that's why the Spike version doesn't work, because it's too conventional. And it's like, this doesn't work when you try to make this story work conventionally. It just doesn't work. You need abstraction because abstraction is economical. You can convey a lot of ideas with one image. Spike doesn't have that kind of sensibility. And I think the film falls completely apart when he tries to do basic normal shit like a church service or someone sitting and talking. It's like, those things just don't work, bro. Those things have rules and you need to know what they are. But those are my thoughts. So I'm conflicted, but overall, I thoroughly enjoyed my experience with it.
All right, fellas, clear the lane. B Wil coming in hot.
Okay, so I watched this movie. Like, all right, so he trying to out film me early. See, this is Ron trying to get me. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pay attention, and I'm not gonna let him win. I'm gonna pay attention, and I'm looking for the themes. And the first thing off the bat is that it definitely has this blaxploitation. Just the look of it is it like instantly. And the only reason I know what blaxploitation looks like is because I watch old clips of Dolomite and Black Dynamite, which I know Black Dynamite is a spoof of all those things, but it actually looks like those old movies. So visually, it's kind of a joke because the only movies I've seen are movies that were meant to be funny. So it's like, all right, man, I'm not going to let this throw me off. So Lee, is so funny that you said that films have convention and there are rules, because the very first scene when he is talking to his guest, I'm like, what the fuck is these niggas talking about, man? Like, so he just showed up at Buddy's house. Why is he there? Who is he to him? Like, I don't understand. It's not incredibly important at that time. It's the beginning of the film. We got time for me to get context on these two people in this conversation, right? Nope. Don't happen. I still don't remember that first conversation between these two people. I just know that I was like, all right, so do I need to be cataloging where the lion's head statue was in the room? Like, how deep is this? Is there some heavy symbolism in here? And I remember thinking the sets and the environments in the rooms were so poorly shot because I had no idea how big this house was. He referenced this house so many times. You know, I'm the only colored man on this block, and he's rich, right? And he's got money, but every room they were in looked like a closet. So how big is this house, bro? I'm so confused. I was confused by what they chose to show. I assumed it was low budget because it's not like they were just, giving black men millions of dollars to make a movie back then. So obviously they were going to do the best with what they got. But at the same time, the performances weren't terrible. So I'm like, okay, if it's cheap, then you would have poor actors. But there's not poor acting in this movie. That's not what's sinking this movie. I'm confused by a lack of context. And that's my mainstream mind going, what are we doing? Where are we? What do I need to know? And I realize that watching films with y'all means I may not get all of those questions answered, but I need some of them. All right, you gotta give me a couple of those things, man.
I don't think anything else on our list is gonna be as I can't even say this is ambiguous per se, because he, like you said, he didn't know what he was doing as far as making a movie goes. But I don't think you'll feel the same way coming out of this as you will for anything else. I'm like looking at the list like, I don't think you will. We'll see. But I haven't seen Raw, so I can't help you there at all.
I'm worried about that one. I ain't gonna lie. Like when we drew that one last, my anxiety shot up. I'm like, oh Lord, I gotta wait. I gotta wait months before going through this, man. But I'm kind of dwelling on some in particular parts because that's what I'm dwelling on, those parts because those troubles for me presented themselves immediately. Mm-hmm. And it kind of persisted throughout the movie. So it made it hard to grasp what I thought the point should be. Like Lee talked about a couple themes, and I recognized that themes were trying to be presented, but I was too distracted by what I didn't know that it was hard for me to appreciate that theme at that moment in time. And aside from that general ambiguity about the movie, there were some things I liked.
Perfect segue, because the next part is like, if there's anything you like, tell me what you like about this film.
I said this in the group chat, and I'm going to speak for everybody here. Miss Marlene Clark? Man.
Tough.
Oh my goodness, this woman's gorgeous. This woman was gorgeous, man. And not in it's the 70s and you look like, no, this woman, like, that is a fine woman. If I dropped her anywhere 1,000 years forward or backwards, like, that's a fine ass woman. It was remarkable to see. What was hilarious is when I'm looking for my husband, is he there? And I was like, this lady got to be in her 50s. She sound old. And then they showed her. I was like, Well, I'm listening now. Like at first when I heard, I was like, she annoying. She just want to know where her husband at. And I can't tell how old Mr. Matus was, right? Because in the 70s, everybody that was 25 looked like they was 40. I'm like, man, his wife might be 45. And so she sounded like an old black lady because everybody sounded like an old black lady in the 60s and 70s, no matter how old they were. But when they showed her, she immediately went from haranguing and worrisome to soft. Once she realized that there was something different at play, and then she kind of put it on for Dr. Hess, and she got finer. Oh, my goodness. I like Marlene Clark. She's my favorite thing about the movie. There were other things, too, but I want y'all to talk about those. I just had to talk about Marlene Clark.
I mean, if you are to pick one thing you like, it has to be Marlene Clark. But yeah, so Chuck, let's cut to you. Is there anything redeemable about this film to you?
Marlene Clark. But no, it's something that Brian already said. The performances were good. I never felt like that was an issue throughout the entire movie. Not at any point did I feel like anything was really off there. So I feel like that made it more frustrating to have such good performances in this thing that I do not understand. That's really it, though. I can't really think of anything else like specific that I really enjoyed. That's it. That's all I got.
I want to hear what Lee enjoyed because he gonna find some stuff to enjoy that I didn't even see.
Go ahead, Lee.
Yeah, so I like the overall vision, what he was going for. And is this where I go in the theme? Because I got a lot to say.
Go, have at it.
All right, cool. So in the theories that I mentioned, Black optimism and Afro-pessimism, they are very closely related. And the only difference between the two is very technical, and I'll spare you guys that. But one of the core tenets of each theme, of each school of thought, is this idea that like Black people reject what has been refused to us. So in this context, it's quote unquote humanity. I guess like philosophically, it would be subjectivity. But I don't think it's a coincidence that the opening lyrics in one of the songs is slaves killed in such a way that they could not die. They were cursed to live forever, and the cross was an implement of their torture. So in Afro-pessimism and Black optimism, they posit this idea that slavery is a paradigmatic condition. It's not something that's fixed by spatial or temporal relations. It's something that lasts forever. Black is permanently married to the concept of a slave because the concept of the human was formed at the very exclusion of what you think of as the Black. It was formed on a distinction. I know what I am because I know what I'm not. That which could become property versus that which could never become property, right? So it's not a coincidence that they say like slaves could not die, because this, in a paradigm, it lasts forever. And this idea that the cross was an implement of their torture is kind of a double entendre, because in the context of the film, at least the way I took it, was this cross being like a way to kill a vampire or a way to get out of this immortality. Is also like that's one side of it, but the flip side is like salvation, and you live forever, and you have to live forever with this burden of quote unquote slaveness. And another thing that I noticed was in the suicide note, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but he said, quote, "You are the despised of the earth. That is, as if you were water in the desert. To be adored on this planet is to be a symbol of success, and you must not succeed on any terms." That reminded me a lot of the poem David Walker by Rita Dove. She says, quote, "You are the most wretched, degraded, and abject set of beings that ever lived since the world began." And that is essentially the primal text for what Afro-pessimism would eventually grow into. So all that to say is like once these characters embraced or got introduced to Blackness, they became something other than human. And to embrace something on the other side of human is to embrace monstrosity. Now, this is not exclusive to Blackness in storytelling. Like we'll talk about this again when we watch Raw, where that film frames femininity and sexuality as a monstrosity once you grow into it and you're aware of it. But this film does that well. And I think that's kind of the thesis statement for this film, even if those were not the terms that Bill Gunn was aware of at the time, because Afro-pessimism is a fairly new construction. The text has always been there, like Frantz Fanon was writing in the 50s, but that's kind of where my mind went with it. I'm sorry if I'm all over the place, but I think that another thing that I noticed was the prayer that he gave. He said, like, the blood of our Lord Jesus Christ, which was shed for thee, preserve thy body and the soul for everlasting light. Drink this in remembrance that Christ's blood was shed for thee, and be thankful. And that's where he moves in to kill her. So I think that this whole film is just about refusing what has been refused you, and him being stabbed with what he was stabbed with, and that infecting him with immortality is another example. Like, that's a clear symbol for blackness and diasporic blackness, cultural blackness, infecting him with what would make him a monster and make him live forever. So those are just some sporadic thoughts that I had throughout my two viewings.
All right, everyone. That concludes the podcast. Thanks for listening. But no, seriously,
Dang.
Lee, in a much more eloquent manner, brought up a lot of things that I wanted to mention. Full disclosure, first time I watched it, I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, that was my reaction. But two things stuck with me. The scene where they're in the field and Matherians are calling out to him. They're like waving, saying, come hither, come hither. So that's the previous generations just calling out to him. And also the quote that Lee just gave, Christ's blood was shed for thee, drink and be thankful. So I like genre films that if you remove the upper level genre, there's still a vehicle to carry it. We actually have a movie that's coming later down the road where if you remove the horror, it still works as a film because it's pretty much a family drama underneath. For me, this film represents generational curses and what they could lead to, because if you remove the vampire aspect of this film, it's really a film about addiction. It's powerful to me that, you know, especially in Christianity, Christ's blood is a means of salvation. But that's the very thing he was addicted to. Just juxtaposing that is like very powerful. You hear Hess throughout the movie try to, you know, rationalize this, try to come to terms with it. Also, another thing in Christianity, you know, everlasting life, immortality, you know, on the other end. He is cursed with this immortal life, but the only way that he can seek salvation is by going to the church and ultimately taking his life after that. So these huge ideas come into play. So yeah, like I said, the first thing I want to talk about is like just the theme of addiction, but in particular, like addiction to the blood, the very thing that is supposed to grant you salvation. So Chuck, B Wil, did y'all like pick up on that watching it?
No, sir. No, I don't. I can't say that it always takes me too many watches to catch on to themes like that, but most of the time it will take me a second to kind of, you know, see those layers and kind of like extrapolate anything from it. I enjoy like watching movies and listening to the commentary afterward, or watching essays that people do, like video essays, like what Lee does, because there's so much that I'll miss, and they'll contextualize a lot of the thoughts that I was not able to put together, or messages I was not able to articulate about the movie, right? In this one, there was nothing that I like grabbed onto that I was trying to figure out. I was just trying to make it to the end of the movie on this one, bro. Like, I got nothing. Like, I enjoyed the first hour, and the rest of it lost me. There was nothing really in that first hour that pointed me in any particular direction. I already messed up from Jump Street when I started the movie, because I thought we were starting with him already being a vampire. So when they were having that weird conversation at the beginning of the movie, I felt like it was a vampire that was very annoyed with somebody he's about to eat. Like, his meal is sitting here telling him this ridiculous story, and he's just like, wrap it up. But then, you know, the suicide attempt and then him being turned into the vampire, I was like, bro, I'm so confused right now. But all right, whatever. We here now. Let's see what happens next. And then I thought I had a better understanding of what the movie was going to be about when Ganja told her very long story about like how she was treated when she was younger.
Yeah.
And the short version is basically her just taking this opportunity, like she's going to treat herself right. Like she sees something that she's going to enjoy. She's going to get whatever she wants out of this. I was like, okay, cool. The rest of the movie is going to be an exploration of that. Nope, it wasn't. So yeah, every direction I thought it was going in, the things that I thought I was like catching on to and understanding, they were just like little fragments, little just pixie dust just thrown on top, and I missed all of the rest of it.
So Chuck, actually, let me piggyback off what you just said. This movie is abstract as hell, but in my opinion, if there is one pivot, like one just even directional shift from that speech that she gave to her behavior in the rest of the movie, that was kind of the pivot. Because also, let me just say, this is a great Dirty Mac movie. But anyway, so at that moment, she has basically said that, you know, going forward, I am going to do the things that I want. I am going to, you know, basically give in to the desires that I have. And then that's when because they were kind of like doing the dance at first, but that's when she said, you know what, Dr. Hess, like, fuck it, let's do it. My husband is in your cellar. It doesn't matter anymore. Let's do it. So yeah, like I said, if there is one pivot in this film, I do think that was one of the few times in the film I was like, oh, two ideas connected back to back. But yeah, so yeah, I just wanted to toss that out. But B, what about you?
I'm like Chuck. So it didn't take too long after. I'm trying to think if he drank blood before he killed Mr. Matus. I still don't really know what went on with Mr. Matus. I was really confused. So he's there and he's having this conversation. Mr. Matus is obviously, it looks and sounds like a mental disorder, like he's unstable. And Hess is too cool to not already be a vampire. Like these is classic Count Dracula vibe. Yeah, and then keep talking. Like I thought he was just gonna throw some salt over there on him and then take a bite. I didn't know. Well, like what's taking so long? Because this conversation ain't doing nothing for me. And I didn't really understand. Like it was really hard for me to understand why is Mr. Matus there. And then he mentioned in the opening conversation they talked about taking in blood, like drinking blood. I'm like, oh, so is Hess putting him on? I don't know, man. It was so hard to understand who was putting who onto this new age eternal life stuff. It was like a pyramid scheme, but I couldn't tell who was selling who. That was confusing to me. So I didn't get until right now that, I didn't know Hess wasn't already. So I know through the dream that apparently you get stabbed and you think that you're stabbed. And maybe we don't realize that that's the process through which you become eternal until he does it to Ganja later. That's when I recognized, like, oh, that's when it happened. Okay, I got you. But everything about Mr. Matus being there, it felt like nonsense to me. I was left with a Dr. Hess that is smooth and classic 60s, 70s brother and blood drinking. It's very vampiristic, but of course the roots weren't in, Eastern or Western European. It was tribal African, which is why it always harkened back to those visuals whenever he had like the thirst or whatever it was. And I thought that was an interesting way for it to go to make that the root of it. But I don't know, like it was really strange. Why would you be that dedicated to that if you had just started? Like the motivations here left me I needed a lot. Like I heard about this eternal life shit. Oh yeah, you want in? Yeah, I want in. All right, I'm gonna scare the hell out of you and kill myself. That's cool. All right, let's go. Like, I don't know, that's not, maybe we've seen so much supernatural since that movie was made that they've made it a lot cleaner. They've given it backstories. They've given it biological sources. They've given it supernatural, satanistic sources. And those in some way made more sense, but that's our 2020s brain having this huge catalog to work from. So it's really hard for me to look at that and go, I get it, because I really did not get it. And I'm still with Chuck though. That first hour was at least entertaining because I see him interact as what I now understand to be a vampire. And it's better in my head if I assumed he was that. So when he is talking to women, like when he knows that one of the better scenes was when the pimp and the prostitute was in the bar or the restaurant, like, look, we need some money to go to the Derby, baby. Go ahead and do what you got to do. Like that was just, it was like, again, blaxploitation movies, man. I was like, yeah, this is what I remember. And she goes there and talk to him. He like, man, I know what this finna be. I mean, I'm gonna eat good tonight. Like all of it, it was so entertaining in all these big pieces. And I did pick up on the themes a little bit. So when Mr. Matus is writing on the typewriter, and he's basically monologuing, he's reading the letter that he just wrote. And I'm like, all right, I feel something here. I am with you all in this moment. Here, movie, you have my attention because I'm listening. And I can't parse all this out in one listen. But I feel the message trying to be pitched. So you got me. And then the next 10 minutes just undid it. I'm like, what are we doing? I don't know, man. I don't know. I definitely appreciate the effort there. And both of those monologues, him when he was writing that and her talking about her relationship with her mother, like that was good. Like that was just good. Here we are in 2021 and I've only watched mainstream movies and I'm like, yes. That was the only bit of character development in the entire movie. I needed more character development. Like I wanted to understand who each of these people were to get them to that point in their lives where they made the decision to take on something supernatural or what would be understood at that time as evil or voodoo or whatever it would be. But she was the only one who got it. I was happy to get that for her, but I was also disappointed that I didn't get it for anybody else. Why did Dr. Hess do any of this at all?
He didn't have a choice, technically. He was a victim and then just had to kind of live with that. She's the only one that really made the choice, I think. The dude at the end, I'm actually very confused on his relevance to the story. Like you said, dude from the YMCA in our like group chat, and I totally missed the conversation about that. I was like, who are you even talking about? But yeah, like go ahead.
You know what I'm saying? You saw right after he had turned her and she knew what she was, they were like, we're gonna have company. And he's like, yeah, I know Mr. Dr. Hess from the recreation center. He helps out. I was like, oh, okay. They finna eat this nigga. And I actually thought that was kind of, I'm trying not to be disrespectful and call it modern because it was just a very good portrayal of, it felt like Hess was going, I am going to let you know just how serious this addiction and this craving is because I'm going to put you in this position. Go crazy. You don't get it yet. You don't really understand it yet. You think this was all a haze and a dream. You're about to realize how serious this is. I'm going to put you in there. And then you'll feel it. You'll feel the craving and the need for blood to keep yourself and sustain yourself. And I thought that was fantastic, but I still didn't know who got out the water butt naked at the end. I was very confused.
Yeah. All right. So here's the thing about that final shot. If they could have conveyed that much better, I think it would have sent the point home because it's almost like they affixed two different images of Marlene Clark. Like it's the one where she's looking confused and then there's like a slight cut where she's smiling. If they would have captured her looking terrified, it would have drove the point home because prior to that, Dr. Hess is saying we can't hide behind the shadow of the cross anymore. The cross is in the living room. And which is actually the next theme that I wanted to talk about, which is temptation. So they're living basically an eternal life of sin. Hess decides that he no longer wants that, so he would rather trade that in for the mortal life of righteousness. So we can't hide behind the cross anymore. And he asks Ganja to join him, and she declines. So Hess is saved. Like he finds salvation. He goes to the church. He is saved. Ganja is like, well, shit, I'm a vampire now. I'm eating niggas from the YMCA. I'm going to continue doing this. So that's her fate. The very man that she killed is now coming back to her. So that's what was supposed to be happening. But like I said, they didn't quite drive that point home. It wasn't conveyed at all.
Yeah, and
I definitely didn't get that he was coming back to her. I thought he was like, yo, I'm out of here, bro. Like, I see an opening, I'm gone.
That's what I mean, though. Like, first of all, if he's gonna be the exclamation point on the film, if he's that important, during that dinner scene and during the sex scene, we need to know how the fuck he looks besides his afro.
Yeah.
Like, we need to know how this man looks. Like, because when he got out of the pool the first time I watched it, I'm like, who the fuck? Like, and I'm a careful viewer, but I didn't know who he was supposed to be. So, like,
I ain't know either.
Like, you gotta show us that. Also, in relation to where she is in the window, you need to show a wide shot of like house, pool. Show us this so we know who's where. And that's just, bro, that's basic ass. Like, get a shot list and you know what you need. Like, it's not that hard. Also, like, just to kind of circle back to that opening scene, because I kind of felt the same way. Like, when I first watched it, I was like, just
Did you cut it off?
Yes. I cut it off a few times. I was like, bro, Ron, what the fuck, bro? Like, like this nigga's a menace to society. Like, what is this, bro? Because that, I think the problem is it felt like Gunn wrote like a macro vision, but he didn't write anything for the micro stuff. So when there were moments where people had to establish humanity, like, oh, we need a scene of these people get to know each other, it felt like he just turned the camera on and said, go. Like, start talking. And what made the film were like, he would start the scene in like the middle of a conversation. So it's like, I'm not even oriented in what you're trying to convey. And it's still nonsense. Also, I don't know what time of day it is, where you are, why you're there, who are you to this person? Like, none of this shit. And I hate exposition, but bro, you gotta do something. Like,
thank you, man. Tell me so.
So those little small moments are kind of why I think the film doesn't all the way work for me.
To speak to what Lee said, one of the most frustrating scenes to me is where I'm assuming this is like some dinner party, social event, whatever, and he just walks up, starts talking to a boy who you think is his son, but they never quite say. And then there's this shot that is very like self-gratifying and gratuitous or whatever, where there is like this sculpture like outside the window and it's focusing on him and he's walking by. And that's the moment of the film where I'm just like, Bill Gunn, what the fuck are you doing, man? You just you're taking the piss now. Like, what are you doing? But
You're just doing cool shit just for the sake of doing it.
Exactly. So that's one of the most frustrating parts. But by the way, let me back up. Duane Jones, trivia for you, B Wil. Do you know the other movie he played in?
No.
Night of the Living Dead.
Oh, okay. I don't think I saw that movie. That makes sense.
Yeah, when Bill Gunn approached him, he was a professor at a university. He was out of acting because, of course, niggas wasn't getting roles back then. Bill Gunn convinced him to be in this movie, and as you can tell, like, his presence just leaps off the screen. So
straight up.
So yeah, when he's in these moments showing like his addiction and showing like this internal struggle that he has. For instance, like when you see him in, I guess, the the poorly planned doctor's office is supposed to be. But when he's like taking the blood, you're like, damn, this nigga really going through it. So in those moments, he is keeping the movie like grounded, because otherwise, if you didn't have such a strong performer, it would be even more ridiculous. But no, he is keeping this movie grounded. So yeah, that's where the movie shines, in those moments where he's showing the struggle that he's having with, you know, basically his immortality.
He was amazing. Him, Marlene Clark. It's wild because it's such a ridiculous movie. Here we are, you know, like 50 years after the fact. Yet scenes where he was the only main character, it didn't feel like it was a ridiculous movie. Like I know that's the ability and that's the power of a good actor, of a good performer, is I don't feel this is so bad because you're on screen and I believe you. So I'm willing to follow you wherever you're gonna go. It's not until something like, again, my understanding had to be broken in the last 40 minutes. I'm like, what? And I thought it was just me. Like, Lee was like, you gotta get in on this nigga. I did not know who this nigga at the table was coming out the water. Like, for a second, I thought he died. I thought Hess died because he got saved and got resurrected. I was like, is that, no, that's not Hess. No, who was this nigga? Like, I thought just a random nigga came out and it was something like a cycle. Like, there had to be one immortal nigga and an immortal woman too. And I was like, okay, so which is this just one of his victims? Because they kill multiple people. So is this just one of the people that he killed that just kind of has to take his place? Like, I had no idea what was going on. And that was trying. But Hess was legit, man. That's why I thought he was a vampire the whole movie. He was too cool, dog. He was really cool.
Oh yeah, it was cool, yeah. Another one of like the coolest shots where he's like just, buttoning up his coat, he's walking. He's like, this nigga's cool. Why wasn't he in more movies? But yeah. That really sticks to me too. So I mentioned this before, but the living room scene with the cross, did y'all know what was going on there?
Where was this in the movie?
So it's closer to the end of the movie, right? I want to say it's right before the church scene where he's talking about we can't hide behind the shadow of the cross. I'm pretty sure that's the point of the movie where y'all were like mentally exhausted, like what the hell is going on? But were you? Chuck is nodding. Yes, so let's go to Chuck. Yes.
I don't remember that scene didn't jump out to me, so I can't say that there's anything that I took. I was just waiting for the ending at that point. And the church, man, look, bro, you signed me up for a sermon, bro. That church scene was mad long.
Hey, it was extra. Okay, so listen, dog. I'm with you, Chuck. I was watching thinking, we're just going to get snippets. We're going to get like a condensed church example. Like, it's going to be like a 30 to 45 seconds just to let you know a church service had taken place. Nah, man. It was
Gunn went to a service.
Yeah, it was a real service.
He went to a service and was like, you know what? He forgot he was making a movie. It was like, dang, we were supposed to get old buddy in here, and he bring Hess in to do his little scene. And then they get up out of there like that. That was crazy. But was it legit a service though?
No, that was legit a service. Because there's that clip on YouTube and people are like identifying their family members. They're like, oh yeah, my mom isn't even an actor. She was just in the choir, and they filmed because I think his name is Sam Wayman. He did the soundtrack or score of the movie, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, obviously like he was like doing music in the church. So he was like, hey man, if you want to just bring this nigga in here as we're having service and we can fake save him for the movie, So no, that is a real church service. Yes.
That's wild. Okay.
This is
it definitely felt like it.
Like a super small critique, kind of a nitpick, but in that church service, they zoom in on the choir, and one lady just will not stop looking into the camera. I was like, please stop looking into the, like she's staring into the lens. Like, can you stop? Like, this is uncomfortable. Like, I know this is a mistake. He just left it in the movie. Like, it didn't have to be there. Like, you can cut to some B-roll of the crowd, but he was like, nope, we putting this in there. Like,
we put it in there. Yeah.
Crazy.
Oh, I'll give you another thing that I did like, because it was hard for me to think of things that I liked. I like consistent motifs and the chant that played anytime the addiction was basically taking hold of them. I did appreciate that. So that's my second thing that I like. There you go.
Yeah, that was pretty, from a sound point of view. Like I was listening. I mean, it was a little annoying. Again, we're so far past that. It's like he played this one sound bite and then just put a whole bunch of delay and reverb. I was like, all right, man. But back then that was like next level wizardry. You know what I'm saying? So, but it did get the feeling across though. It
for sure.
Confusion and like a driving, persistent confusion. And I was like, you know what? You did it. I caught the feeling. I got you. I'm with it.
Yeah, for all the other like film 101 things he didn't get, he had that down.
He did. Yeah, he captured that one. Am I the only person who felt like, man, y'all got 3 half closets and tried to say he's in a mansion? Because you didn't even try to say it.
I can tell you when they finally sold me on the place being a mansion was when she was laying on the bed and he came out the floor in the little elevator thing.
Yeah, that was the first time.
Yeah,
Like,
because
there might be
threw
more
me
to this
way
house.
off.
Yeah.
Also, like when they were at the dinner table and she let him know to like, I know you have my husband in that freezer. When she walks to the back room and she's all in one shot and his head is in focus and she's off. I'm like, okay, this is a pretty big area. That's not like a matte painting or anything. Also, like we didn't see the best version of the film. I mean, we saw his ideas, but this film print is damaged and used.
Yeah.
Like this is not the original negative in its best condition. So we don't really know how well he conveys this space. Like if he does have a shot with deep focus, we wouldn't know because the print is damaged. So
I guess to wrap this all up, great discussion, by the way. So after our talks, I guess this is for you two, Chuck and B Wil. After our discussion today,
do we want to continue the show?
Rethinking everything. Man.
So I guess this is a two-parter. So I won't say did you enjoy this, but did you gain something from watching this film? And also, will you be willing to revisit it in the future?
I will personally not be revisiting this film for any reason. It will honestly stick with me longer than I want it to, with no work necessary. I will not have to go back and watch this one to remember him on the floor, head next to the head of a light-skinned nigga drinking his blood from in between the tiles. Like that image has been in my head for like the last week. No, I don't have to rewatch this for this to stick with me. You did your job, Ron. Thank you. and fuck you.
So before we cut to Chuck, like I said, the first time I watched this, I disliked it, but I would keep hearing that damn song from the trailer in my head. I would keep seeing the images of the Metherians, and these images just stuck with me. And kind of like you said, BA, it seems like it's starting already. Like these images would stick with me, and I would keep thinking about it. And the more I sit with it, I'm like, okay. And then I would start to connect the pieces. So I don't know. I feel like maybe a month from now, you could be like, okay, I'm striking up Ganja Hess again.
I don't think that's gonna happen for him. I don't think it's gonna happen.
All right, Chuck, go ahead.
I'm glad that I watched it. I guess it's kind of selfish, but I appreciate any time I get to see, especially in like the last year, almost 2 years now, when I get to see what Black filmmakers got to do, you know, in their rare opportunities that they had, especially, you know, this one. I think you kind of said that he kind of went against what he was asked to do, really, with the movie. I think you were talking about this one, wasn't it?
Yes. So also a bit of backstory. If I'm not mistaken, Blackula was released in 1972. This movie was pitched as a response to Blackula, but he was just like, I'm not going to do a damn vampire movie. So he took that opportunity because the producers who funded the film knew jack shit about filmmaking. So he was just like, I'm going to do what I want. And as you see, he did just that.
Clearly. And I appreciate that. If I take nothing else from this, I appreciate that fact. Will I rewatch it, though? I don't know. That's a tough one. Out of celebration of this first season of this series, I bought any of the movies that I didn't already have. So it was a blind purchase. I make a lot of blind purchases. And I can say I don't feel like I regret buying it. I'm going to be glad to have that up on the shelf. For sure. There's like only one movie that I've like spent money on that was a blind purchase that I actually regret. It's not even worth mentioning at all. But I like this. Like if I didn't like the movie, I liked the conversation about the movie. I feel like that that was like worth it. Yeah, that's how I feel.
All right, Lee, you're the last one. Closing thoughts.
Yeah, so I did buy the movie, and I will be revisiting it because I think that the film has a lot to offer, and I think it flies in the face of this thing that I see in not just cinema but art, where the Black artist is painted as like not unconventional. They never get the title of like idiosyncratic master. They're always painted as less than competent, nonsensical. And I think this film kind of flies in the face of that because he did have the ideas. And I think that it also flies. This film is going to go into the Black radical art collection that I have because I do think it's a Black radical film. And I love it for that. Even though I think that the little moments are where he kind of needed some help. It would have helped if those producers knew how to make movies because they could have stepped in like, hey, this is how you do shot, reverse shot. This is establishing. That would have helped a lot. But, you know, all in all, I'm glad I watched it. Thank you, Ron. This has been on my watch list for fucking years since I watched The Sweet Blood of Jesus. So I'm glad you gave me that push to watch it. It's way better than that shit. Don't watch that.
Oh, yes.
Like that, that movie sucks.
I think everyone said it already. Great conversation. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be on the other side of the table down the road. But yeah, I'm glad that we had this conversation. I'm glad that these conversations will continue. And in one way or another, all the films that we chose are very, very important to, you know, film and very important to us personally. So we hope that you join us again. And until next time, peace.
Later.
Man, love it.